2024 has been off to a slow start reading-wise. So in January, I managed to finish 3 books, and in February, I was hoping to finish more than that, but I only finished 2. Regardless, progress is progress, and I'm here today to make creative book spreads of the 2 books that I read in February. And here is a flip through of my 2024 reading journals so far. So hey fam, if you're new here, it's Icy of Icy Studio and welcome to my channel. So before we get started, I thought it would be cool to show you a little library adventure where I returned books and picked some up that I placed on reserve. So I don't buy books because I'm not a rereader, which is why I rely on libraries for books. I guess the downside to that is I don't get to read new releases because of the demand. Nevertheless, books are books and I enjoy reading them regardless of when they were published. And another one of my favorite thing about reading is making book spreads about the books that I've read. So these are the 2 books that I finished in February. One is a 3-star rating and one got a 5 rating for me. And let's do the 5-star book first, which is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So even when I borrow books from the library, I still annotate them using sticky notes. I like keeping a record of my favorite quotes, which I feel play a big part of why I keep a reading journal, because these quotes made me feel things and this is what I want to remember whenever I look back on these books. Apart from that, I also like making my reading journal creative, so this is me just gathering stationery that reminds me of the vibe of the book and collaging away. I also like experimenting with different lettering styles. I mainly draw inspiration from the font that is used on the cover of the book, and I hand letter something similar whenever I write the title. So I used to print book covers and stick them on my book review page, but I'm saving that for my reading log, which I will complete at the end of the year. If you haven't yet, please feel free to watch my 2024 reading journal setup. My overall theme is Dark Witchy Academia, which is the same as my 2023 reading journal theme. The girl is in her witchy era. So anyway, back to this book. I have always been meaning to read this, but it was unavailable at the library for the longest time. I've read other books by this author before, like A Darker Shade of Magic, Gallant, and Tunnel of Bones. I really like the way she writes because it feels so magical and I get caught up in the world building and I can clearly imagine everything. I also love her use of metaphors and everything feels so poetic and lyrical. Addie LaRue is by far my most favorite book by Victoria Schwab. And honestly, I went into this book blind like every other book that I read. I like the narrative of alternating between the past and the future when it comes to chapters. And as you can see, there are so many quotes that I liked from this book, which I wrote in blue ink. And I write my thoughts and my reactions in regular black pen. And as you can see, I needed more than 2 pages, which is my standard number of pages for a book review. I feel like this is so well written and the plot was executed perfectly. It is 448 pages long, which would usually take me more than 2 weeks to read if it was like an okay book, but I loved it so much that I breezed through it and I loved it. I loved it. Did I mention that I love it? Oh, and another thing that I loved about this book is that it made me think of what I would do if I lived forever, and on the other hand, what I would do if I only had a year left. So I love how books make me ponder. And I also write all of that in my book review spreads. Oh, and another thing that I wanted to address, I don't know if I've addressed this already, but somebody asked me why I keep a reading journal. So aside from wanting to remember, the most significant things, sometimes when I look back on a book that I haven't read in so long, I forget what it's about. I do track my progress on Goodreads as well, but I want something tangible and something that I can hold in order to remember what that book made me feel and what that book is about, if you know what I mean. So if you keep a reading journal too, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your reasons why you keep a reading journal. And that is my book spread for The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which is my first 5-star review for this year. The second book that I finished in February was called Ledge by Stacey McEwen. I actually just saw this at the library shelf and the cover caught my eye, which is basically why I picked it up. So this is a young adult fantasy about a place called The Ledge, and it's basically winter there all the time. It is such a harsh and cruel place. Aside from the fact that it's always winter, it's always cold, it's always freezing. So the residents in Ledge actually get captured or get picked off by these creatures called the Glacians. So we follow this girl named Dawson who's lived in the Ledge all her life, and she's the only living member in her household that's left. And at first I found her to be fierce and such a badass protagonist because she's really like brave, but I guess her circumstances made her that way. So I gave this book a 3-star rating because at the beginning it was very exciting. We get to know the character, her circumstances, and her environment. And in the middle it felt like it dragged on a little bit and girls started to get thirsty, and I'm like, what is going on here? Aren't we trying to escape or something? And when it got to that part, it felt like I didn't want to read anymore. But anyway, I'm glad I pushed through because I actually like the plot twists at the end of the book. I'm not sure if I'm gonna read the next book. I actually saw it in the library and the cover was really beautiful, but then again, I don't feel excited or intrigued enough to read it. But I don't know, maybe in the future. So anyway, book spread wise, I wasn't really happy with how this page turned out. I actually was after some, monster or demon stickers, which I don't really have. So the ones that I actually ended up using didn't feel like they connect with the story of this book. So those are the books that I've read last February. I am hoping to get more books in on March. So these are the books that I'm currently reading. I don't know why, but I like reading more than one book at one time. So if you're the same, please let me know in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next video.